Welcome everybody to this stream. We're going to talk about how we can know whether we're actually living according to faith or living by faith, or whether or not we're just living in ourselves or in some other reality. And I think growing up, I heard about faith, and I don't know because I can't remember exactly what was the language around what was being taught, but to me, it kind of made sense that faith was just a set of beliefs. Like you believe God's real, you believe Jesus is the Son of God, that is your faith. And I have shifted from that position just from studying the Bible and from living by faith, sort of accidentally at first, but now I'm getting clarity on it. I want to share with you the clarity that I've received. My name's Phil. I'm a missionary and I work full-time with YWAM. And here on this channel, I talk about calling and what it means to not give up on your calling, what it means to keep persisting, how to overcome those obstacles that are both internal and the obstacles that are external. If you have a sense of calling, if God's led you somewhere and you're trying to get there and you don't want to fail, you don't want to give up, or maybe you're already in the process of giving up and you want to come back from that place, subscribe, follow along with the journey. Let me know in the comments where you are in this journey, where you are geographically. And this is interesting. I'm doing these lives. I'm still wrestling with how to do them well. And I'm curious if portrait like this way, where you're like watching on a phone, is the best, or if I should do it in landscape. So if you're watching on a phone, let me know in the comments, even on a rerun of this. Or if you're watching landscape, let me know. I'm trying to make it look good on whatever device you're using. Today we're going to be talking out of the Bible, out of Hebrews chapter 11. And we're going to start in the first verse. And we're going to go through and talk about faith, what it means to live by faith. And I'm going to give you guys some clarity that I've received on how to know if your life is by faith or not. So let's start in the first verse. It says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen." And what sticks out immediately to me here in this passage is that there's an assurance and there is a conviction, but it's not about God, it's about things. Like there's something there that we're hoping for. There's something there that we are not seeing, that we have an assurance, we have a conviction about. And as we get into these examples, I think it'll become more clear that this conviction is not just about a belief or a claim. It's actually about something happening. So we see in verse 2, "For by it the men of old gained approval." So faith is crucial here to approval. And it says in verse 3, "By faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible." So we see faith is the reason that we believe that God created the world. And so there certainly is an aspect of faith that is a set of beliefs. But as we jump down, I'm not going to read all the way through here. It's a great chapter. We see in verse 5, "By faith Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death, and he was not found because God took him up. For he obtained the witness that before his being taken up, he was pleasing to God." And then in verse 6, "And without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him." So we see here more clarity, more definition around this idea of faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So there's just something essential about this faith. And then it actually spells out for us what this faith looks like. It says that we must come to him believing that he is, or believing that God exists, and believing that he's a rewarder of those who seek him. So we see that walking by faith with God requires us to believe he exists and believe that he rewards people that seek him. And this is interesting because on the surface, this seems like a claim or a belief, but the question of whether you believe in God is not so much a question of, do you say on a survey, yes, I'm a Christian, yes, I believe in God. It's more a question of, is your life positioned around God's existence being a significant reality? Would you be living different if God didn't exist? And do you believe that your purpose is to seek him? Your purpose is to follow him, to please him by that faith? Because I think I was confused around just saying, like, I've just got to say I believe in God. But what he's looking for is for us to begin to pursue him and to live like his existence has some significance to life. And this isn't totally clear yet, even as I'm saying it, like it's not coming off perfectly clear. So let's keep going down. And in verse 8, we see a great example of faith, and that is Abraham. It's the longest example we have in this list of examples of faith. In verse 8, it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed by going out to a place which he was to receive for an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. So we see Abraham here, who this is, again, by faith. This is a description of faith, that he got a sense that God was leading him. He was called. And what did he do in response? He obeyed by going out to a place which he was to receive for an inheritance. I was just reading this morning in Genesis, this story, and it actually Abraham doesn't realize when he's told to go somewhere. One, he doesn't realize where he's going. And two, he hasn't even received the promise yet that God was going to give him the land. He just had received the promise that God was going to bless all nations or all family lines through his family. So he had a promise, but that promise wasn't about land. So he's leaving where he's at to go somewhere where he doesn't have any land without any clarity or promise about God giving him land. And what I don't think we totally grasp about this is that Abraham didn't really know what was happening. I mean, he certainly knew that he needed to leave where he was at, but here in this passage it says that he did not know where he was going. You see, I think we think faith is a general sense that God's real, but then when it comes to God telling us to do something, we want to understand it. We want to make sense of it in order for us to actually step into it and do it. But here we see faith is actually saying, as the first verse say, I have a conviction of something that I haven't seen, that I have an assurance of something that I'm hoping for, that something is something God has promised, God has spoken, and even though I don't see it, I believe it. And that's not just a claim about God's existence, it's a claim about what he's leading you to do. Abraham was willing to follow, not knowing. And let's get more information in verse 9. By faith, he lived as an alien in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, fellow heirs of the same promise. For he was looking for the city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. So we see here more of what Abraham was looking for, the something that he was looking for. He was looking for a city, and this city had foundations whose architect and builder is God. So Abraham was believing that God was calling him to something, to a city that was better, something that God was building, that God was doing, and he didn't know where he was going. He didn't know that there was a promise of the land being given to him, and he was a sojourner. He was in tents, but he believed God. He believed God is speaking to me, and even though I don't understand it, I've got to obey. Now, see, I think this is what faith looks like. If you want to know if you're living by faith in your life, ask the question, would your life look any different if God wasn't real? Are you taking something that doesn't make sense to you, that you feel God's leading you to do, and doing it? That's faith. If you're just doing what makes sense to you, if you're like, God, I'll do what you lead me to do so long as you explain it to me, now you're not operating by faith. Now you're saying, God, I need to see it first, and it needs to make sense to me. It'd be like Abraham staying there saying, God, I'll leave my home country, but I need you to tell me where I'm going and why I should go there, and it needs to be better than what I've got now, and I need some assurances here. Abraham didn't have that. Abraham obeyed God. He said yes to God, not knowing where he was going and believing that what God was building, what God was leading him to, was better. So if you want to live by faith, you need to get a sense of where God's calling you, what things he's causing you to go after, what things he's wanting you to hope for, what he's wanting you to be convicted of. You need to have a sense of clarity of what those things are that you're believing God for, and then you got to begin to live your life as if those things are what your life's about. It's not about where you're from or the house you've got. It's about leaving that behind, leaving the confidence that what you know behind, to go to somewhere where God is, believing that he has something better, believing that it is going to be life and it is going to be better because it's him. That's what you need if you want to live by faith. I hope that's clear to you. Check out this video here where I talk about trusting God. I talk about this idea of making all the decisions in your life as simple as making just one decision. And if you step in to that one decision, you start making that one decision right, all the other decisions in your life are now positioned to be followed by God. So go check out that video, and thanks for watching. How do I end this sucker? Let me know again where you're at, what's going on, and I want to hear from you guys. I want to know if you are connecting with what I'm saying.